Hi everyone and welcome to Left on Red. My name is Red and this is r/Maliciouscompliance. Our first post is by JazzB54. Kids are awesome at malicious compliance, but it is a two-way street. My kids can be picky eaters at times. My wife made some damn good chicken soup, but the kids were complaining that there were veggies in their chicken soup. They hate veggies. Veggies make them sick, and they wanted my wife to pick them out of the soup. We tried to tell them that good chicken soup needs veggies to taste good, but they were being stubborn. I'm sure some parents can understand. I told the kids, if you really hate the taste of veggies, I'll make soup tomorrow and you guys can make sure I only put stuff that you like. They liked the idea at the time. The next day, I get the pot filled with water, all the typical soup ingredients out, and gathered the kids. I asked for their approval on every item. Chicken? Yes. Salt? Yes. Black pepper? No. Gross, too spicy. Celery?
No, I can't even stand the smell.
Onions?
No!
I went on with that, with them rejecting parsley, bay leaves, and other veggies. The total contents of the pot ended up being chicken, water, salt, noodles. And the soup was done cooking. I served it up and they excitedly started to eat. A few funny faces later, and one of them said,
"It tastes weird. This isn't very good."
I said, "But I only put in everything you guys approved. I think from now on, I should make the soup, right?" They looked at each other and said,
"Can we have Mom's soup instead?"
Since that day, they haven't complained about finding veggies mixed in the food. Sure, they almost always eat around a carrot or a green pea, but they understand that it adds flavor. That was a wonderful way of teaching a valuable lesson to your children. Well done, Dad! And now, from parents complying maliciously, we move on to children complying maliciously in our next post by Mindcella. When I was about 8 or 9 years old, my mom suddenly decided to teach my sister and I to hold our farts until we entered the bathroom. Yeah, that's going to turn out well. I have no clue why. Maybe she got tired of us letting one rip when the urge came upon us. This might have been very useful skill to have because, as a child, I used to hold my farts the whole school day and let them go like a bat out of hell the moment I walked through the door at home. Unfortunately for her, I thought farts were the funniest thing on earth and that they could be used with close family as a tool for my own humorous needs. So she randomly tells us from this point forward, we are only to fart in the bathroom. We lived in a single-family home with only one bathroom, so I would hold my farts all day until I heard her not only enter the bathroom but sit on the toilet and start using it. I would then open the door, stick only my butt into the room, and let go of the farts I had been holding. I would then close the door and say, "Excuse me," and walk away to laugh. After a few days, the only fart in the bathroom rule was ditched. Well, OP, don't you have just the greatest sense of humor? Get it? Sense? Okay, never mind. I'll just stick to reading. Our next post is by Auntie Patico. This happened years ago at what would turn out to be my last year at a Catholic school for reasons that will become obvious. I don't have anything against people of faith, but it was not my thing very early on. I was 12 years old and in 7th grade. I was becoming disenchanted with my Catholic upbringing. I had so many questions, and it might have saved my faith to have them answered reasonably. The adults didn't want to reason with a curious 12-year-old. They wanted to see a nice Catholic girl who didn't feel compelled to make so much distasteful noise. Sex ed was still a part of any Catholic curriculum, and as it turned out, my religion teacher, Mrs. M, was also my sex ed teacher. When she opened up our first sex ed class with, "Now, I'm just as embarrassed to be here as you are," I didn't see it as an expression of empathy. I saw it as a grown woman humiliated to be teaching basic biology. It made me sad. Junior high sex ed wasn't just biology, though. It was an effort to shape our view of the world. Mrs. M taught us sexual health as per Catholic doctrine and also peppered in some of her own weird personal viewpoints, shaped by her own history, I guess. We had this box at the front of the class where we could discreetly write down and drop off the questions we were too nervous to ask out loud. Someone asked what orgasms feel like for women. We knew men ejaculate, but what do women do? Mrs. M did not explain. Perhaps because she hadn't had one a day in her life? She said,
The women's orgasm is not necessary part of sex. It's not necessary for procreation, and sex is for the purpose of procreation.
That sounded very dodgy to me. I brought her statement home to my mother, who had always been very open with me about things. I asked her if women really weren't supposed to enjoy sex all that much. She was horrified. She told me lots of men like to make women feel good, and sex should feel good for everyone. Then she said something that would be lastingly valuable. Ask questions in that class. Teachers are supposed to answer your questions, and if they can't, maybe they shouldn't be teachers. The next class, Mrs. M taught us that homosexuality was a sin. This was too much for me. I had a gay uncle who had been a huge fixture in my life. I felt attractions to girls in my class, and I refused to believe God would think who you love is worthy of hellfire. She went on to say gay marriage was both impossible and wrong. I raised my hand and asked her plaintively, "Why is gay marriage wrong?" Her answer was,
Because they cannot procreate, and procreation is the purpose of marriage.
I sat silently. I didn't demonstrate agreement nor dissent. I went home and thought about that for a while. I needed to come back to sex ed class with an inquiry that was going to properly mess Mrs. M up. It didn't seem like an easy task, but I came up with something I thought was worth trying out. The next sex ed class rolled around. Mrs. M taught whatever stuffy, deplorable lesson she had in plan. Then she opened up the class to questions. I raised my hand, she called on me and said, "If a woman is infertile, but she really loves the man she's with and wants to share the sacrament of marriage with him, does the church approve the marriage?" It was a no-brainer for her, of course. I followed up with, "But she can't have children, and marriage is for procreation. Why can she get married, but two men or two women who can't procreate cannot?" Anyone who is seasoned in Christian apologetics can explain that one pretty easily, but I had hit Mrs. M somewhere deeply personal in front of 30 other children. Mrs. M was a married woman of around 50 or so with no children of her own, very unusual for a Catholic woman who doesn't believe in birth control. Mrs. M was infertile, and to her I was questioning the sanctity of her marriage and its validity in the eyes of the God she had dedicated her life to. It was a sucker punch, and she couldn't collect herself to punch back. She instead flew into rage. Her face became a deep shade of red as she said, "This is not a debate class," and sent me to the office. For context, I did not know Mrs. M was infertile. It's something my mother told me post-office battle. An apology letter was determined to be insufficient by Mrs. M. My mom came to collect me and a battle ensued. Mrs. M wanted blood by way of my suspension, and my mother was having none of it. Curious kids don't get suspended for questioning what they're taught. The only thing that worked in my favor was my history of being a nerdy, non-disruptive child with good grades. A compromise was stuck. I wouldn't get suspended, but I could not participate in sex ed class nor religion class. My grades in those classes would be determined solely by the written portions. These written portions were completed at a desk positioned outside the classroom, which Mrs. M smugly carried out for me every class. I didn't mind working outside of the classroom because to me it was a good example of the ease in which an adult can collapse under a child's questioning. I decided that religion and sex ed would become my specialty classes. I would master the curriculum. I would get the best grades I could, and Mrs. M would have to watch it happen. I worked very hard, harder than I had in any other classes. I studied at length and did additional research online. I finished out the semester with about 95% in sex ed and 98% in religion. The final exams for both classes were entirely multiple choice. I was permitted into the classroom to be supervised for the exams, and there was no room for her biases to creep into the grading. She passed me the Scantron sheet back for my religion exam, 100%. I thanked her with a saccharine smile. She fixed me with a grim expression before moving on to the next classmate. A few days later, it was a Scantron sheet for the sex ed exam, 100%. I said, "Thank you for all you've taught me," as I smiled up at her. She said something under her breath and moved on. Mrs. M hated me with a distinctly un-Christ-like passion, and she found other ways to express it in the following semester. It warms my heart a little to think of her having to grade all my schoolwork, one correct answer after the other. The relentlessly curious heretic nerd girl was a pain in her side that wouldn't go away. Worst of all, she demonstrated that she understood what you were teaching. She just didn't believe in it. Too long, didn't read, my Catholic sex ed teacher tried to punish me for questioning doctrine. A compromise punishment was struck, and I, in turn, resolved to ace all her classes. She hated me with a passion, had to grade all my assignments correctly, and watch me get honors. And that was r/malicious compliance. My name is Red, and this is Left on Red. If you like this video, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Also, press the bell notification button so that you get notified every time I upload a new video. Bye!